and welcome to the 11th episode of Barebones for the Practical PM series. In this series, we pick up topics that are important to product managers, cut through the fluff, and get to the essence of it. Before we get to the content of this episode, let me remind you that my book, So You Want to Be a Product Manager, is about to come out. I am now waiting for the sample copy, and once that's been verified, it will soon be available for all of you. So do watch out for the announcement. Now, in this episode, we are going to talk about evidence based decision making. If you have been watching this and the previous series, The Practical PM, this topic should not come as a surprise. Nor should I need to tell you that this is important for product managers. In fact, in most of the topics we have discussed and the examples we have taken, we would have used evidence based decision making in one form or the other. Evidence based decision making, as opposed to going by gut feel, personal preferences, or the preference or orders from influential stakeholders, is so integral to being a product manager that it must become a second nature to you. And it will with time. In the beginning, however, it must be consciously practiced. What we will do in this episode is take examples of different kinds of situations product managers can find themselves in and understand how they make decisions based on evidence. This would, of course, also include the discussion on what are the different kind of evidence that you can use. Consider a situation like this. Suppose yours is a food delivery app and one fine day everybody in the office goes berserk because by 12 noon the number of orders are down by almost 20% compared to the previous day. What do you do? When I ask questions like these to potential product aspirants, and honestly many a times even people who are already working in product roles, they start thinking of all kinds of possible problems that might have happened. A competitor came in, the discount coupons are not available, something went wrong in tech, was there a recent release and whatnot. Some even wonder if it is just seasonality and the drop is because of the day of the week or some holiday or something like that. People are going by their gut feelings. They are making guesses. Sometimes they may be slightly more informed guesses than others. Someone who has worked in a company like that will make informed guesses, but they are nevertheless guesses. How do you make things evidence based here? For example, if you are wondering whether it is just normal seasonality that people order less on this particular day of the week, or on certain occasions people prefer going out rather than ordering in, how do you verify this? If it is a day of the week seasonality you are expecting, then one way to verify that will be how the number of orders compare to the same day in the previous week instead of comparing it with previous day. So if it is a Sunday, when you see the drop, you compare the number of orders until 12 noon last Sunday and see if it is down compared to that. If the number of orders are stable, then this may be enough. But if it is a fast growing company where the number of orders are increasing very significantly every day and every week, then even with the dip, the number of orders today may be comparable to the number a week ago. It is still a problem because it was supposed to significantly grow. It was supposed to be significantly higher. To validate that, instead of just comparing today's number to the number a week ago, you can compare the week on week growth rate for Sunday compared to the previous Sunday. So if today is S0, last Sunday is S minus 1 and Sunday before that is S minus 2, then you want to see the growth percentage between S minus 2 and S minus 1 and then between S minus 1 and S0. If the latter is less, then you know that even if number of orders compare, you have a problem because growth rate is not what it was expected to be. This was actually a very simple example. In practice, these kind of things would be internalized and everybody will panic only if the drop is not explained by seasonality. But if you are on your hypothetical day one in the company and hence not aware of the normal, then also by trying to look for evidence, you would know whether or not to panic. It also outlines two very important points. First, guessing is natural. So natural that we don't naturally realize we are guessing. So consciously make sure that you don't stop at guessing and start looking for evidence instead. Second, the evidence that works depends on the context. Even in this simple example, for previous week comparison, what number you should be comparing depends on the context of whether the number of orders is stable or is it growing. Now, suppose either with internalized context or after looking at the evidence, we have established that the drop of 20% is a reason to panic. What next? I already mentioned all kinds of problems that people guess, but how do you look for evidence of any of it? Now, the ideal way to do this is structured problem solving, for which I would refer you to the initial episodes of the previous series, the Practical PM. But for the purpose of this episode, where we want to learn how to look for evidence, let us say that before structured problem solving, there are a few high probability guesses that you would like to validate. Say, one of the guesses is that something has gone wrong with our advertisements. How do you validate that? Now, placing of order happens when users go through a series of steps. So, if overall number of orders has gone down, then the number would have gone down at some specific place in the funnel. It may be one or more. Think about what is the first step in the funnel you can observe on the product that will be affected by advertisements going wrong. It will be wherever the traffic from the ads comes to. If ads bring people to home screen, then traffic would have gone down there. If ads get people to install the app, then app installations would have gone down. If ads bring people to specific restaurant or dish screens, then views on those type of screens would have gone down. By checking and comparing the expected number, you can validate if ads are a problem. Similarly, if a quick guess is that coupons are not available, then you can check if the numbers are down at that stage in funnel where people look for or apply coupons. If the guess is something as generic as some technical error, then you may not want to go looking for evidence in general. That will become another guessing game. Instead, you would want to do structured problem solving. Look at the funnel, see where the drop is, and then go further from there. Now, while doing the structured problem solving, you may realize that the real drop is between people browsing the restaurant and dish listings and adding dishes to the cart. So you know something is going wrong there. There are a few possibilities of what could go wrong. Perhaps the prices of dishes have gone up, or for some reason a lot of popular dishes are not available. How would you look for evidence that one or two of these have happened? Numbers can help here. You can look at average price of dishes available on the platform between previous day and today. Has that gone up? You can also check the number of dishes available across all restaurants between previous day and today. Has that gone down? If overall numbers validate that one of these is a problem, then you can break down those numbers further to pinpoint the issue. If the average price has gone up, you may want to break it down and look at averages in specific areas or by specific cuisines, or if the number of restaurants is handleable, then even at the individual restaurant level to see where exactly have the prices gone up so suddenly. Once you know where, you may be able to figure out why. It may very well turn out to be a technical glitch here, because a large number of restaurants or dishes suddenly increasing the prices is an unlikely thing to happen. Or it may be that restaurant owners are working in coordination to get a message to your company that your commissions are too high. So, we looked at situations in this example where data from your product itself can be used as evidence, so that you're not making decisions in the dark or by pure gut feeling. Let us take another example. Whenever there is any kind of listing that has location data associated with it, a listing of schools in your area, a listing of houses for rent in a city, a list of NGOs supporting elderly people, a list of petrol pumps on your way from Bangalore to Mysore, one of the first things that seem to occur to people from all walks of life is that it should be shown on a map. Even product managers and designers do that. Sure, maps are a way to show such listings, but so is a simple list. And you don't want to choose maps by default. You want to look for evidence to drive the decision of what should be the way of presenting the information. Let me first take an example of an existing product, which is a real example where the information was available as a simple list as well as on the map. Now, many stakeholders were insistent that map experience needs to be improved for better conversion because it was terrible. The second part of the statement was right. The map experience was not great at all. But was that enough of a reason to put resources into improving map experience? One of the first things to establish was that map based browsing was even important for the users. So we looked at the number of people who even clicked on the link for browsing map. It was negligible. The counter from people who are sold on the idea in such cases is that people don't click because map experience is so terrible. But that can also be validated. Only if people have tried using it will they know that it was terrible and not come back to it. So if your product has a mixture of new users and returning users, you can see if at least the new users click on it in a significant number. If they don't, then it doesn't matter what the actual experience of using map is. They never care for it. It can be good, it can be terrible. At this stage, another counter you will face is that since default listing is not map, people do not discover it. But if the placement of map option is prominent enough, then at least a decent percentage of people should be willing to try it. If the number of people willing to try it is negligible with a prominent position, it would be a terrible idea to make it default option. On the other hand, if you do find significant number of new users clicking on that option at least once, and then you notice that people don't return to it, that will be an interesting situation worth further investigation. What do I mean by further investigation? Significant number of people trying the maps option then not coming back can be an indication that users are interested in map browsing but are not finding the experience right. But before you decide to fix the experience based on what you or your internal stakeholders feel is right, you would want to gather evidence as to what is right. At this point of time, product data may or may not help. If you are collecting usage data properly, you may figure out that it is when the users try to do specific things on map interface that they drop off. That data may give you a clue as to what is wrong, but there may be situations where people do nothing much on the map interface, so there is no clue to be had. This is the time when you would want to do user research. If it is feasible in your organization's context, a very good starting point may be just talking to some of your users to find out what is going on. Otherwise, you may go for more formal user research. Getting user feedback this way is a different kind of evidence than product data. In some sense, it is weaker in that you can only talk to or do research on a limited number of users, whereas product data comes from all users. But in another sense, it is much more informative because it is not dry data from which you are trying to infer things. You are getting the information directly from the users, which help you understand why and how of user motivation and needs much more clearly. So it is a different kind of evidence, but it is very legit, very useful evidence. When you talk to the users or do user research, you may realize that the people who do click on map interface click with a very specific intent. They don't want to see all the information of listing on the map. But when they need to navigate to the place or even check out the route, that's when they look for map. Now, if your product is made for showing the information on map but not navigation, then it doesn't matter how much improvement you do in the browsing experience, you will not see increased usage or better conversion. You have to solve the navigation problem. So once again, by asking the users, you can take an evidence-based approach towards the quality of map interface instead of a blind approach where you may have been spending resources fixing bad color contrast to make relevant information prominent, but seeing no good outcome from that because the user never wanted information on the map, just the navigation. If you are trying to create a new product where map-based interface for information listing is possible, but you aren't really sure if that's the way to go, then doing user research will help you understand this and stop you from wasting time and resources on what the user is unlikely to need. If navigation is what they need in a new product, you might be better off giving a link to Google Maps instead of incorporating entire map feature in your own product. If you have a simpler feedback to take, you need not conduct user research. A simple survey might suffice. For example, if you have large enough a base of users, then in this example of users not going back to map interface, you may have conducted a survey right when they come back from map screen and ask them to provide a reason. If some answer or option in the survey really stands out, then that is pretty good evidence that you have identified a problem. Let us consider another example. Suppose you are a furniture rental company and the management wants to get into furniture selling to scale the business to the next level. You are supposed to figure out what the new product looks like. How do you follow evidence here? In this case, the very first evidence you might want to look for is that the new market is big enough before you even get into the nitty-gritty of what product you want to build. Practically, perhaps the management has done this before deciding to get into the market, in which case the information should be available. If not, market data is the first piece of evidence. Typically, what is big enough will depend on where the company is and where it wants to go. Assuming furniture rental market is limited, it is likely that the furniture selling market is much bigger and hence worth going after. If a furniture seller was going to try to get into furniture rental, they may not find the size of the market good enough in such a case. At any rate, you want to get the market data first. Suppose market is big enough. Then do you get down to building an e-commerce product right away? That would be jumping ahead. Next, you want evidence-based determination of who your potential users are. You may have existing users from your rental business, but limiting your research to those users will be, well, really limiting. You want market research here to identify the different segments, their sizes, their requirements, etc. Market research is different from user research, and for those accustomed to user research, this may feel more high level. You are trying to get very specific about how users use certain products or fulfill specific needs. You are trying to assess market overall. Traditionally, market research will be the domain of marketing, but as a product person, you must understand the need for this and the implications of market research outcome. Sometimes you may need to do it yourself or get it done from a research agency. You may also want to do competitor research to understand what exists in the market. After this, depending on market size and internal competencies or ease of initial implementation, you may select your target segments, either among customers or among the kind of furnitures you offer, and then figure out your MVP from there. During this, you may do detailed research on features of competing products as well to establish what your users are familiar with. This is different from competitor research done at the market level, which focuses on their positioning and market strengths and weaknesses. I will summarize the kind of evidence we have used for decision making in the examples in this episode. There is product data, of course. This is the kind of evidence that you literally work with every day. Then there is user research, which can be formal research done by a trained user researcher or an agency, but which can also take more informal forms like simply talking to some accessible users or a more scalable form of user surveys where feasible. Even reading reviews of your product or social media chatter about it can serve the purpose in some cases. This is essential because product data may not always give you an answer or insight, or whatever the product data shows, you really need to understand the user motivation behind the behavior to use it. Or there will be situations where you need to explore the problem space and data confines you to what exists, not what is possible. So user research in more formal or less formal form is a very strong way of gathering evidence. Then there is market data and research, which is used to understand market size, customer segments, etc. There is competitor research at market level and also competitor product research, which goes into specifics of the products that they offer. The categories of evidences I am mentioning here are just for understanding. They aren't necessarily exhaustive. Evidence can come from many places and sometimes you can get really creative with it as well. So long as there is good reason to trust the validity of evidence and very importantly, so long as you are following relevant evidence, you would do much better in your product management decisions than average. Before finishing, I would like to reiterate the point of relevant evidence. Sometimes people tend to have a certain way of decision making and then they try to force fit that to every decision, no, it doesn't matter what. If they understand funnel, they apply it everywhere. If they understand user research, that's what they want to do for everything. But as we have seen in the examples, evidence should be relevant to the problem at hand. If there is a sudden decrease in the number of orders, then trying to do user research instead of looking at the product data in funnel immediately would be really idiotic. High-level market research is not a substitute for situations where when user research to understand their behavior with the product is required, and vice versa. When you want to decide if the market is good to enter, you want to look at market data and not get into nitty-gritties of how cool a product you can make for users who may never bring enough business. So that's all. Follow the evidence in your product decision making. Thanks a lot for watching. Do keep an eye out for next episodes as well. And don't forget to keep an eye out for my upcoming book, So You Want to Be a Product Manager. Thank you.